Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a ranking of all of the Dark Souls 1 bosses. So I just finished up my blind playthrough a bit ago, and by the way, thank you guys again for all the support on that series. It was literally insane. If you want to go watch it, it's in a playlist on my channel. It's called the Dark Souls Blind Playthrough. But anyways, I figured now that I've seen basically everything the game has to offer, aside from a few areas and a few bosses and DLC and stuff like that, we go ahead and rank the majority of the bosses. Now, in this ranking, I was going to include gameplay until I realized I don't have the raw footage anymore for some of these bosses. So the only way I could get any footage for these bosses would either be A, stealing it off of YouTube, which is not my style. I don't like doing that because that gets a little complicated. Or B, downloading my videos off of YouTube and then putting them in the video. But the problem with that is, if you know anything about YouTube compression, by the time you guys see these videos in the first place, they look like utter dog water compared to how they actually looked in like the editing software when I was editing it, and you know, just like the raw file. But going ahead and double compressing it like through YouTube twice, I don't want you guys watching a 240p video. Anyways, with that out of the way, it's kind of hard to see what like some of these bosses are. I'm gonna have to get in like really close to take a good look at these guys. And if I end up messing any of these up and I get any of these wrong or get the names wrong, it's simply because it's hard to see them. I'm literally zoomed in almost as far as I can. I'm gonna try to like look at it as good as I can before ranking it. So first up, I'm pretty sure that it's either a Torius or it's Ornstein. Oh wait, no, I think this is Ornstein down here. Okay, I think this is a Torius, maybe. I did not actually get to the DLC yet, so that one's just gonna go to the did not fight category. I've heard it is literally one of the best boss fights in like Souls, period, so I definitely want to get to it. Bed of Chaos, F tier immediately. I have no idea what they were thinking when they designed that boss. It is literally like the worst boss fight in gaming, period. I literally don't understand how it passed like QA testing. It is just so broken, and the only reason that I beat it was because I did that trick where you like quit the game, go back in after every stage, and it kind of like resets you so you don't get killed immediately. And even then, I had to do the boss run so many times over, it is engraved into my soul, and I never want to fight it again. Right now I'm doing another playthrough of Dark Souls off camera just so that I can kind of get that raw experience by myself and do some of the other optional areas. And I can already tell you I am not looking forward to the Bed of Chaos fight whatsoever. Some of these bosses, it's hard because I didn't like get a good look at all of their faces in the game, if I'm being honest. Like this one, I have no idea what it is, or this one, so I'm going to put them in didn't fight. I think this is supposed to be the Asylum Demon, I believe, from, like, the beginning of the game. I'm gonna put it at A. I know, like, realistically, it's not an amazing boss fight or whatever, but it's just the fact that it does such a good job in the tutorial section of, like, teaching the player the mechanics of boss fights, the mechanics of the game in general, and kind of, like, the strategy elements that are implemented into the game, if that makes sense, because combat in Dark Souls isn't like normal combat in video games. It's very strategy based. It's like, okay, I'm managing my stamina, my health, when am I going to heal, when am I going to dodge, am I going to block this attack, do I have to dodge this attack? Like, it's very strategic. It's almost like an RTS in real time. I just realized what I said, RTS in real time. Yeah, RTS means real time strategy game. You know what I mean though, it's like RTS but you're actually doing it. Ooh, the boy Pinwheel. Oh yes, I'm gonna put this at an S just because this boss fight was so easy and it was at a point in the game where I was getting a little frustrated just trying to navigate the catacombs because I did not have a divine weapon for any, like, no part of my playthrough did I ever have a divine weapon. So by the time I got to Pinwheel and it was that good of a pushover, like that easy of a pushover, it was just such a relief. Now that I think of it, as much as I do want to keep it there, I gotta move it down to C. It's a really bad boss fight. Is it F? No, it is not Bed of Chaos. It is not Bed of Chaos at all. But it's very, it's not even a boss fight. It's easier than most of the mob enemies in the game. Like, the mob enemies from Undead Burg are harder than Pinwheel. Pinwheel, you can get through it no hit. Nito! Oh my god, can I tell you guys something? This was actually my most anticipated fight of the game. I was so excited. I saw him in the opening cutscene, I was like, oh my god, Nito looks like such a badass. I cannot wait to fight him. Got to his boss fight, beat him first try, just taking his hits with Havel's armor. It was, C. You know, the enemies that you can cheese really easily, I'm probably just gonna put at a C because it's just like, it's not really a boss fight. I mean, even if you didn't do it without it, I guess like if you would have moved around the arena more, you do have more skeletons that spawn in, so for that sake, I guess I'll put it at B because it definitely isn't as easy as Pinwheel, but if you know what you're doing and you have weapons that are good enough, yeah, you can first try it, no problem. Alright, we have the Iron Golem. This is the first boss fight in Souls where I did not even have to touch the boss and I killed it. It was ridiculous. And see, I did that with a summon, but there's also a way you don't even need summons. You don't need any assistance. You don't need anything. You can make him fall off the map. Like, you can kill this guy without even touching him. So for that reason, I almost want to put him in F, but again, it's not like Bed of Chaos level bad. It's just really easy. So I'm going to leave it at C. Next up, we got the Vagina Monster. If you don't know what you're doing, it's actually a pretty challenging boss, but for me, I have a really easy strategy. I wait till it opens up its vagina teeth and starts doing the weird thing, and then it like slams down, walks forward, because when it walks forward, it only goes in one direction, which is forward, and then you wait till it stops, you go behind, hit it in the ass, that's it. So, it's easy once you learn it, but until then, it's definitely very challenging, so I'm going to put it at an A, because there's still some fight to be had there. Four Kings, I want to put it in A, but I also want to put it in B, because it can be challenging if you're not ready. Like, if you're not ready and you're going in there with weapons that aren't very good in terms of DPS, because this boss really is just a DPS check, you're screwed. But CB, I went in there with a Gravelord sword and Havel's armor, tanked all the hits, and got rid of him in like 2 minutes. So for me, I would have put it in C because it was just so easy to cheese for me. But some people, you know, it may not be that easy for them. If their armor isn't as good, if they don't have Havel's armor or didn't think to use it, or if they're using a weapon that isn't good DPS-wise, then yeah, I mean, I could see how it could go in A as being very challenging, but I'm a little tossed up. I'm going to leave it in A for now. I'll see if I change my mind by the end. Okay, see, a few of these bosses are kind of just blending in. I think this is Ceaseless Discharge, this is Fire Sage Demon, and this is Centipede Demon. Okay, so let's get these out of the way real quick. Fire Sage Demon, I'm going to put it in C. It was so easily cheesable. You literally just trap him in a corner, and the only attack he will do when he's trapped in the corner is the weird jump attack. He'll do the jump attack, you dodge out of the way, go and attack, repeat. It's very, very easy. I'm putting it in C for that. Ceaseless Discharge, you run to the other side, grab the armor, run back to the fog wall, he'll do the jump attack, you Lion King Mufasa him. Very, very easy. And then the Centipede Demon, I'm going to put it at B because it's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's also not super easy. But if you get underneath of him, you can cheese him really easy and just kind of like slice at his underside and get through it in about 2 minutes. Dark Sun Gwendolyn, I'm going to put it a B because until you learn how to dodge the one attack where he does the super big magic beam that can even go through the pillars, it can be pretty challenging. Granted, it doesn't take like very long to learn how to do that, but until you do, and especially for some, I'm not gonna try to put myself up on a pedestal and be like, oh, I'm a great gamer. But for some gamers that aren't as good or don't play video games as often to kind of pick up on those little nuances, they might be stuck. Like, how do I dodge a magic beam? It's bullshit. Or he's shooting arrows every time I try to run at him, or he keeps teleporting. Like, they may not know that the best way to go about it is to go at him while he's still attacking, do like a lunge attack and try to get a few swings while he's doing his teleport animation. So I can see how some players could be frustrated for that. Since it can provide a decent challenge, I'll leave it a B. Bell Gargoyles, I'm going to put in S tier. It is an amazing skill check for like the first, that's not even like the quarter way of the game. I'd say, you know, for the first like 1/8, 1/6 part of the game, it's a very good skill check. It definitely put me in my place at first. If you restore your humanity and go into this with, you know, Bro Solaire, you can definitely knock this out like no problem. In fact, in my series, I ended up beating them like quite quickly. It was only about 30 seconds just because Solaire was messing up, but otherwise, like on my first couple of goes at it, it was definitely like very challenging trying to learn their moveset. This one, I don't know if we fought it. It looks like a DLC boss to me, so I'm just gonna leave it there and didn't fight. I believe this one is either called Magnus or Manus or something like that. I know that's a DLC boss from the Notorious of the Abyss DLC. I didn't do any of the DLC yet. Dapper Demon, it's kind of a BS boss, honestly. When you run in, you're gonna get slashed immediately. And learn, I don't even really know where to put this one, because once you run up the stairs, sit on that little ledge, you can like just plunge attack him over and over. Learning his moveset isn't that hard either. He only does like 3 different moves, but again, it is kind of BS how he just attacks you immediately. Like a first time player is not going to know, hey, I need to shield up walking through this fall gate. It's yes, it's an okay boss fight. It's not bad by any means, but it's definitely just very mid. Moonlight Butterfly is also gonna go C. I don't know what they were thinking when they called this thing a boss, but it is not that. I was literally laughing when I was fighting this thing, because up to this point, I had fought the Taurus Demon, the Asylum Demon, the Bell Gargoyle, so by the time I got to this, I was like, what is this? Chaos Wish K-Lag is going to go S. Very challenging moveset to learn. It's very hard to learn when you should heal, when you should go up and attack. I had a very good time fighting this boss. And I mean, hey, she's pretty sexy. What do you think I'm talking about? I'm talking about the spider, not the girl. Sif, I'm going to put it A because I beat this one first try, yet again. But he's a big boy. You're not blocking and dodging at the right time, so he's gonna knock you on your ass. You know, all the big enemies in this game, they're very big for a reason. They do a lot of damage. And I could definitely say, yeah, Civ will keep you on your toes. You gotta make sure you're staying on top of your healing and make sure you have a very good shield going in. And this boss just forces you to be really aggressive. Like, if you want to hit him, you gotta be, like, in between his legs, right in front of him. I only was able to kill him because I had a lightning spear, which has a very good thrust range. If it wasn't for that, if I was trying to kill him with a battle axe, I don't think I would have done it first try. It's honestly really hard trying to get to him and hit him. I do not recommend doing this boss fight locked on. There's a lot of bosses I can say that for in this game. Ones like the Gaping Dragon, Civ, Chaos Witch, K-Lag, those are boss fights you want to do locked off, or else you're going to get screwed. Ornstein and Smo, we're going to take them out, both at once, S tier. I got so mad at them in my video. I claimed that they were bad design, bad game design. It is a terrible boss, and I was complaining and whining. But after you learn their moveset and you stop being a little bitch like me, you realize, oh, shit. This is video game designing genius. This boss fight was only made by a genius. The timing of their animations is perfect. You are forced to stay on your toes at all time. You have to be frame perfect in your dodges. It is brutal. If you can beat Ornstein and Smo, you can beat the entirety of Dark Souls, no problem. In fact, I first tried literally every single boss, including the final boss, after beating Ornstein and Smo. The final boss was a lie. I almost did, but that was the time where I wasn't recording and I realized, oh shit, this is the end of the game. So I forced myself to like wouldn't kill me as much as I didn't want to so that I could start the recording, and then just go through and try to beat him again. Ornstein and Smo, I respect them, and they've definitely become probably one of my favorite boss fights in gaming, period. Let's just get these last few out of the way. Is this guy considered a boss? I mean, if so, I'm putting him in F. It's not even a boss. Like, it's so easy that it's insulting. You can kill him in literally one hit. The Taurus Demon is another one I'm gonna put in S, because this one messed me up for like 4 or 5 hours. However, once you learn that you can cheese him really easy with plunge attacks, especially if you're two-handing your weapon, it does become pretty trivial. So for that reason, I think I gotta drop it to A. I would, honestly, in all reality, if he was any later in the game, I would put him at B or C. But just because of the fact that he is quite a hurdle to get over at first, I'm going to leave him in A, because I'm sure this is... If people got up to this point in Dark Souls, I'm sure there was plenty of players that weren't as good that ended up quitting after fighting Taurus Demon, which you got to respect for that. I don't know, he is really trivial once you learn him. I'm gonna leave him at B. Anyways, yeah, this is my tier list. So the first two down here, Bed of Chaos and this weird, like, priest one, these are two of the Fs. As bosses, I can't even believe the priest counts as a boss, but they're whatever. The game would be fine without them, really. I mean, I don't have anything... Well, no, the Bed of Chaos I have something against, but the priest I don't really have anything against. And then these four, I just haven't fought yet. I'll get to them when I get to the DLC, I guess. Yeah, now I want to hear from you guys. Do you guys agree with my tier list or not? Today, we're going to be doing an Elden Ring Remembrance bosses tier list. Obviously, in our first playthrough, we went through and defeated every single Remembrance boss. Oh no, my light just got even more dim. Nothing is going right. Is this how my year is going to go? Is nothing going to go right? Look at it. I use this little, like, desk lamp when I'm recording back here to light up my face, and it just... No, it just went dim on me. Hold up, let me look for a charger for it now. Oh, did I forget to mention the fact that this morning when I turned my PC on, it wasn't even working? Like, it booted up to a black screen, and it just wasn't doing anything. The PC was on, you know, all the cables were connected, it didn't do anything. Let there be light? It doesn't seem like it's much brighter. How's that? No, now there's a weird glare on the camera. Oh my gosh. Well, let's just hope that it randomly gets brighter as we record. First things first, it got a little bit brighter. First things first, we have Estelle. Ooh, where do I think I'll put it in A. This boss is pretty cool. My only complaint with it, now, I don't know if this is my fault or if I'm just not that good at the fight, but personally, I had trouble getting hits in on him. It felt like I was only getting a hit in, like, every minute or two. That's honestly my only complaint with it. Besides that, his moves were telegraphed really well. The spectacle of the fight was insane. He can summon in, like, these giant galactic boulders to shoot at you. And again, he looks cool overall, and he gets his own dedicated arena, which looks sick. Personally, I think he deserves to go in the A tier. Next up, we have Elden Beast. I'm also going to put this one in A, basically for the same reasons as Estelle. Sometimes it's hard to get a hit in with how much he moves around, but he looks really cool. His arena is probably my favorite in the game. It's such a different color scheme for what we normally see in Souls games. You know, normally it has like a greenish or a reddish or a bluish hint to it. We haven't really seen like a yellow tinted boss fight or arena like this. At least not that I can recall. Yeah, the fight overall was pretty solid. My only complaint is that you don't have access to torrent during this fight. However, I do understand that having the access to torrent probably would break the fight a little bit, might make it a little too easy, but considering the fact that it's a new mechanic they brought into this game, I feel like it's only fitting that you'd be allowed to use it for the final boss. I feel like they should have let that up to the player to decide whether they wanted to use torrent or whether they wanted to stay on foot, especially when you consider how much Elden Beast runs away during this fight. But again, it's not that bad. Once you start moving towards him, he starts moving towards you, and it bounces out. It's not as bad as some people make it out to be, but just for that, I have to keep it an A. Fire Giant, I'm going to put it in F, and I'm not going to talk about it. If I talk about it, there's going to be all the toxic Souls fans that come in here telling me why I'm wrong. I'm not even wasting the breath. It's a new year. My day is already going a little rough as is. Let's keep the positivity up. Padre the Grafted. It deserves that. I must say, this boss kind of terrified me the first time that I fought him. Once you get to the second phase, cuts his own arm off and, it becomes one with the dragon. It's insane. My only complaint with this boss, which is a complaint that I have with many bosses in this game, are the Nameless King timings. However, now that I've beaten the game and I've fought most of the bosses a couple times, I'm starting to get used to it. And once you really try to hone in and learn each of the boss's timings and their moves and how they're telegraphed and their combos, it's really not that bad. However, I must say, whether you're a newcomer or whether you're coming off the heels of, any of the other Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Sekiro games, it's definitely a little tricky to get adjusted to. Oh my god, it just got brighter. Another cool mechanic that I forgot to mention about Godric is the fact that I believe he's the first boss you encounter where you have to jump to dodge some of his moves. I really liked how they did that because, jumping and crouching, it could have been an easy throwaway mechanic. Just it's an open world, so, you need access to those movement skills, and they could have left that at that. But the fact that they incorporated it into this fight, it's so masterfully as well, to a point of where it almost works into your own combo because you gotta, dodge, jump. The way it just all comes together so beautifully, it's only something that FromSoft could do. Godfrey / Heralu. A tier, maybe. I don't know. Does it really? Maybe a B. I didn't really find this guy that memorable. And now, don't get me wrong, he's sick. And I know in terms of lore, he's a huge deal or whatever. Don't even get me started on his transformation cutscene when he, kills the lion or whatever he was doing there and he became, one with it. I don't know. He's a really cool boss. It's just for some reason when I think about Elden Ring bosses, I don't think of Godfrey. He doesn't come into my mind until somebody specifically mentions him. But again, that's not a diss or anything against the boss. I think he's a perfectly fine boss. I love fighting him. He just doesn't really stick out in my mind. I'd be lying if I said I had any idea what this boss is. I'm gonna need to do a Google search. That's another thing I find in this game. There's so many bosses that I forget about half of them. It's just hard to see because it's so small, but I think this is meant to be Lich Dragon Fortisax, in which case, I'll put it in a solid B. It's not a bad boss by any means, but again, it's another one that doesn't really stick out in my mind, especially since it's so far off the beaten path and you have to do so many different quests to get to it. Again, that's not a knock against it. It's just if you want to fight that boss, you're going to have to jump through a lot of hurdles to get to it. Its moveset wasn't bad, but again, I don't know. Dragon fights are just kind of starting to blend together in my mind. There's 30 of them in this game. Well, that might be an exaggeration, but it feels like there's a lot of them in this game. Off the top of my head, I can think of 10 that are in the game. I don't know, with there being so many dragons, just starts to kind of feel like a been there, done that type thing. Again, not a knock to the boss by any means, it's just, I've done that song and dance before. While we're on that topic, Plasudasax, or however you say his name, I'm actually gonna put him in A tier, just due to the fact that he gets his own arena. His arena looks sick. He looks different from the other dragons, so it's enough for me to rank it higher. The other ones are just dragons, while this one's a dragon. I found this to be one of the more in fact, I would call this the most challenging dragon fight that I've endured up to this point. Obviously, I haven't fought in Madeira and DS3 yet, but up to this point in my Souls career, this is definitely the hardest dragon fight I've been involved in. It's definitely a boss that requires some patience and requires you to not rush into it thinking you can just take him because you're a high level or whatever. No, you need to learn this guy. I fought him on New Game 0 at level 130 or 140 or something like that, and I still got my shit rocked. This is definitely one of those Souls bosses that you need to learn, respect, and do the dance with. Let me tell you, if you go in there with not enough vigor, that opening lightning attack is going to destroy you. Millennia, I would put S tier just because it's an amazing challenge, but I have to put it A because, yes, it's a great boss. Yes, the spectacle is there. Yes, I'm a mommy Millennia simp. And in fact, I don't even have a problem with the waterfowl dance. I think that move in itself is just fine. You want to know what I have a problem with? The lifesteal. I can't stand the lifesteal. If she even, breathes on you, man, she gets, tons of HP back, and I'm not necessarily saying it's bullshit. I'm just saying it's not fun to fight against. In terms of mechanics though, like everything besides the lifesteal, I think the boss is amazing, and the fact that the waterfowl dance is there and it requires such frame-perfect accuracy to dodge, I think is great. It means only the best of the best are truly going to be able to beat it. That's why I called my video fighting her, "This is the real final boss of Elden Ring," because she essentially is. Put it in perspective, I would rather fight 6 Radagons and 6 Elden Beasts before ever facing Millennia again. I love the boss. I just respect my sanity enough to not do it for at least 6 more playthroughs. Oh, not the flurry, not the flurry, don't! Malekith, S tier. The first phase is whatever, but the second phase, hands down, I definitely can't say it's my favorite in Souls of all time. My favorite would definitely still be Soul of Cinder. That is my favorite boss that From Software has ever done. But second favorite would definitely be Malekith. He has ranged attacks, he has close range attacks, he has like mid-range combo attacks, like he has it all. He isn't too aggressive to a point of where he feels like bullshit, but he isn't too slow to where he's a pushover. He's like right in the middle. He's right there. He slows down, jumps across the pillars, does his ranged red wave attacks. Those require a little bit of like precision and timing to dodge correctly and efficiently without getting hit, and then you got his combos that you can dodge through if you time it right. Because while he doesn't necessarily have the Nameless King type timings that you come to expect with most of the bosses in this game, there's still a few delays on his attacks to where you have to be cautious of what you're doing and not just spamming the dodge roll button like previous games would have let you do for the most part. And plus, the aesthetic of the boss in the arena, I don't know why, I just love it. Again though, I do kind of feel like the first phase was a little unnecessary. Like the fight really gets started and really becomes fun once Malekith comes out and goes apeshit. Mohg is gonna go D for me. Nah, that's not really fair because with the proper build, he's not that bad. Does he deserve? No, he doesn't. I'm gonna put him C. Now, while he's not a bad boss necessarily, I can't stand by bullshit mechanics, man. There is no way to evade the ceiling stab move. I have read through many forums, my own comment section, Reddit threads, GameFAQs threads. Nowhere I have looked have I found a way to counter or 100% evade this attack unless you have a very specific item. And I know, while yes, if you have that item, you're fine, you can survive it, no problem, but the fact that you need to seek out that very specific item just to be able to fight the boss without, you know, risking taking damage, I think is complete bullshit. If a player takes the time to learn a boss efficiently and correctly, and if they learn how to dodge and block and parry through all the moves, then I think that that player deserves to be able to get off a victory where they don't even get hit once. The fact that they need that item, I can't get behind that. I like when a boss, it just comes down to your skill. You know what I mean? Like when the whole fight just comes down to your skill and no other gimmicks. Those are the best bosses in my opinion. Again, that's just my opinion on the matter, but you know, if you want to shit on me, go for it. I'm not losing sleep over it. I'm always open to civil debates. But the people that get like real toxic and take it real personally, like you just kicked their dog, I'll just never understand why some people take it so personally. Anyway, Margit is gonna go S tier. Wait, is this Margit or is this Margot? Aren't they? Well, they're the same. Oh wait, no, this would be Morgott because you don't get a remembrance for beating him. Okay, well, regardless, I'm gonna put him S tier. While I don't really like the fact that he's used twice throughout the game, once being the skill check at Stormvale or before you get into Stormvale, and then at the end of the game before you get to the Erd Tree, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of recycled bosses in this game, but that's a conversation for a different day. The fights in themselves are different enough for it to not be an issue for me. The only reused parts in these fights really do just become his character model. Outside of that, especially once you get to the second phase of Morgott, it is a completely different boss. I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record when I'm trying to describe some of these guys, by the way, but it's like, a lot of the bosses have very similar design in these games, so it gets hard to give them unique appraisal. Like, there's only so many times where I can say, hey, the arena looks cool, hey, he looks cool, hey, you know, the fact that his combos are timed in such a way that you have to be, you know, efficient in your dodges and stuff. Like, there's only so many times I can say that. But basically, anything I've said for any of the other bosses goes for Morgott, but even though my appraisals for these bosses are relatively the same, does not mean that these bosses are the same. It just means that my appraisal for these bosses or my compliments are just kind of universal, which is a good thing, because that means that all of these bosses share very good respective traits that are fun, but challenging, and still fair to fight against. Don't even get me started on the one move he does. Like, I've never even gotten hit by it, but I just think it looks so cool when he, like, gets that giant freaking ceiling of, like, knives that just start, like, shooting down at you that you have to, like, evade real carefully. I love that. The music for this fight was also pretty sick. And I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but if you've never done any lore research on Margit or Morgott, definitely do. It's pretty crazy. Radagon is gonna go S. Yeah, you know what? No, it's gonna go S tier for me. I really like the Radagon fight. In fact, I think Radagon on his own could have been the final boss. I loved fighting this fool. This was another classic Souls boss where every death felt like a lesson, where each time that you died, you were getting closer and closer to defeating him. He has a wide range of moves. He can, like, absorb your magic and shoot back lightning bolts at you. He has the giant ground slam attacks. He can, like, fly up in the air and do an even bigger attack that takes up, like, the whole arena. And then when you get up close to him, he has the up close combos where you have to be very careful and calculated. He swings overhead, he swings from below, he swings from the side to bonk you in the ribs. This is one of those bosses that goes, like, right up there with, like, Soul Ascender for me, because I love those fights in Souls games. Don't get me wrong, I love the big grandeur fights where you're, like, fighting dragons and giant monsters like Radon. But I love those personal fights where it's, like, it's one-on-one, it's neck on neck, you guys are, like, exchanging hits, you don't know who's gonna win. It's very tense. I think the thing that I like about these fights the most is it's not like the dragon fights or the other bigger fights where it's easy to just run away, avoid some damage, heal up, and then come back when you're ready. Like, no, he is on your ass the whole time, and you work around his schedule. He's coming for you, and he's gonna do whatever he wants regardless. Like, you don't have a say in this. You gotta make sure that you're calculated on top of your game, whereas with bigger enemies, you know, you can run away, and the boss can kind of work around your schedule. Like, okay, let me catch up to you, let me attack you. But no, with this, it's like, you gotta make sure that you're paying attention to every move, step, and breath that he takes. Because even if you try to run away, there's a chance he's gonna do the giant ground slam attack and take up the whole arena with his lightning waves and just turn you into a pile of Play-Doh. Radon is gonna go A tier for me. Oh, no, what am I saying? He goes S tier. This is honestly a fight that I don't know how much I want to go in depth about. Like, I've talked to a lot of people that have honestly just been too scared to fight Radon or haven't fought him yet just because they've heard about it, but seriously, if you haven't fought this boss or if you've never seen it, I can't do the disservice of spoiling for you. You need to experience this fight, whether you watch a clip on YouTube, whether you do it for yourself, just absorb all of it. The spectacle, soundtrack, and then afterwards, I'd say go do some lore research, but like, this is one of the few characters in the game where they genuinely explain the lore to you. Like, when you're talking to the characters, they kind of explain the character to you, and then even after you beat the boss and you talk to some NPCs about the fact that you beat him, like, you get even more lore about him, and it's kind of nice putting the pieces together by yourself in the game. Yeah, this is definitely one of those special fights where I think you just need to experience it for yourself. Regal Ancestor Spirit. It's gonna go C. It's not a bad boss, not very memorable. It looks cool, the arena's cool, but it's alright. Renala is gonna go A tier for lore reasons alone. When it comes to gameplay and I mean, even without lore, actually, I think she does deserve that A spot. Can I put her S? I don't really know, because the amount of summons that she calls in by the end of the fight sometimes, when you're still under-leveled and you're not exactly destroying her, as I have been able to do with, like, Guts Greatsword, then yeah, by the end of the fight, it gets pretty annoying when she's calling in, like, 30 summons every minute. Yeah, her arena looks cool, and from what? Yeah, she's, like, the only mage remembrance boss as well. You know what? I'm gonna keep her in the S tier. Now that I think of it, I really like this fight because there's two phases to it. The one in the library, it's a nice callback to Deacons of the Deep. And then you get into the second phase, you get there, the arena looks cool, she looks badass, casting all the magical spells. I think for me, it's just the aesthetic of the fight. It looks so good and it looks so cool that it sticks with your mind. It's one of the most memorable bosses in the game, in my opinion. Let's not forget the fact that she's the one that lets you respec afterwards. Like, it's one of the best features of the game. So for that, yeah, you know what? She deserves the S tier. Finally, Rykard, ending on a good note. S tier. This is actually the final remembrance boss. Wait, was this the final one that I beat? No, the final one was Blood Dragon, I think. Maybe it was Asta. I don't know. Whatever the case. It was one of the last ones that I beat, and it's definitely one of my favorites in the game. Well, yes, it's a little gimmicky because it's the Yorma the Giant situation where you have to pick up a very specific... Well, you don't have to pick up a specific weapon. At least I don't think you do. I just chose to. But it's definitely the optimal way to do it because once you start abusing the L2/LT attack, the fight becomes pretty easy. You're able to knock out either his first or second phase in about, I don't know, like 10 hits. This is another one I really wouldn't want to spoil for anybody, especially since this is another one that's a bit off the beaten path, and I also know plenty of people that haven't gotten to experience this one just because I'm pretty sure it's entirely optional. Again, if you haven't experienced this one, please do so, and if you have like 3D headphones or surround sounds or something to boost the audio, please wear those or turn those on as well. The Volcano Manor quest as a whole is just one of my favorite in a video game, period. I loved that quest. It's my favorite in Elden Ring, hands down. We can get more quests like that in future games. I would love that. Just being like the Agent 47 for the Volcano Manor family, that was such a sick concept to me. I loved that. Not to mention there's a bunch of branching side quests there, like you have Patches and you have Raya. It was executed so well. I love it. However, one complaint I have is it is a little too hand-holdy. Like, it tells you exactly where to go on the map. I do kind of wish they could have found a way to maybe make it, like, remember Morrowind, like the old Elder Scrolls games, how they would only ever give you hints or, like, landmarks to look out for to get to your next objective? I feel like something like that could have worked here. Like, he usually hangs around, I don't know, the scavenger shack out in Limgrave, and then you have to go look for him, then you see him out there, it's like, is that the guy? And then maybe, you know, the note could say, like, he's usually found wearing, like, I don't know, a red Scooby-Doo bandana. And you look at him, you see the red Scooby-Doo bandana, you're like, oh yeah, that's my guy. Then you pull out God's great sword and just, like, slice him in 5 pieces. That's personally how I wish it could have been done, so then it was a little less hand-holdy, but I do understand why they did it the way they did it. I mean, the world is massive. But anyways, going back to Rykard, yeah, he definitely deserves S tier. Nothing is more badass than having this serpent hunter and just, like, pulling it back, getting the power of the storm or whatever it is that your friggin' sword is summoning, and then just whipping it at him and seeing his health bar disappear. It is sick. Yeah, that's my tier list. Now I want to hear from you guys. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down in the comments. Considering that I have now platinumed Elden Ring, I figured it was time that we did a tier list of all of the Elden Ring areas. I've done like 1 or 2 tier list videos on Elden Ring before, but I believe it was only on like the bosses. And I realized I've done area tier lists for all of the Dark Souls games, but I haven't done one for Elden Ring yet. The rankings go as follow: S, great, okay, annoying, and bad. I don't like how they have this set up. I'm actually going to change this to the traditional just like A, B, C, and F. So we got S tier, which is obviously like amazing. We got A, which is pretty great. We got B, which is just good. C, which is meh, okay, I can live without it, and then F is just bad. So let's not waste any time. First off, Hollowhorn Grounds. I'm gonna put that in like, it's okay. It's not a bad area by any means, but I'm pretty sure the Hollowhorn Grounds is literally just the boss fight with the Ancestor Spirit. And speaking of the Ancestor Spirit, I always get those mixed up, like the Regal Ancestor Spirit and the Ancestor Spirit, because they're essentially like the same thing and they're both underground. Yeah, this one ain't too bad. I'll leave it in a B. Lake of Rod is gonna go F. I don't know who QA tested this and then went back to From Software and said, yep, that's good to go. That's good to go in the game, because I can tell you right now, it definitely wasn't. Lake of Rot sucks. If you haven't been to this area yet in Elden Ring, consider yourself lucky. You know that new Scarlet Rot ailment they added into the game that everybody absolutely hates? Imagine swimming through a whole lake of that. That takes you a solid 4 minutes to cross. Like I said, if you haven't been there yet, I wish you luck. Landell Ashen Capital is gonna go S tier for me. I was sitting there just in awe the first time that I saw this in my original playthrough. It's literally just Landell, but I believe there's a little bit less of it that's actually accessible now since, you know, most of the place is covered in ash, some stuff gets covered up, but the place is just beautiful aesthetically. The soundtrack is amazing. The bosses in the Ashen Capital are amazing as well. Well, Sir Gideon Ofnir actually isn't that great, so Godfrey is really good, and would Radagon and Elden Beast count as Ashen Capital? I don't believe there's like a separate area for Radagon and Elden Beast, so I think they do count as Landell Ashen Capital, so that definitely deserves S tier in that case. Because while I do still think that Elden Beast is really annoying with how, like, much he runs away, and then you got the golden homing ball attacks, there's some things in that fight where I'm like, I wish some of it could have been changed. But overall, that fight in itself is pretty good. The spectacle is amazing. Then you got Radagon, and Radagon is easily in my top 5 From Software fights, period. And Godfrey, don't even get me started on Godfrey. Godfrey is an amazing fight. Granted, I feel like Godfrey is a little overrated in the Souls community. Like, he's a good boss. He's an amazing boss. I love Godfrey, but everybody's like, oh, he's a top 5. He's an amazing boss, this, that, and the other. And I don't really see it. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I mean, I know people are going to be like, oh, it's the lore, man. The lore is amazing. But lore doesn't make a boss top 5 for me. The boss itself and its gameplay mechanics is what makes it a top 5 for me. Lore is just bonus points. Like, Soul Ascender, that is my favorite From Software fight, period. Because, I mean, it's literally everything in one. You got different play styles, you got amazing lore, you got an amazing soundtrack, the spectacle of the fight is amazing, and then the fight mechanics itself, it never feels like an unfair fight. And there's not really any fights that I can think of in From Software's catalog that I would deem unfair besides, you know, like Beta Chaos. That one just sucks. But there is some bosses where, like, you die and it always feels like bullshit. Like when you go up against Millennia, for example, every time that you die to Waterfowl, even though it's not inherently BS, it just feels like BS because the move comes out of nowhere. But for a boss like Soul Ascender, it's very easy to tell, like, okay, I'm making a mistake here. Okay, I need to do this better. And that's why I like Dark Souls bosses better. I'm gonna have to, like, make a whole video on this someday. For some reason, Dark Souls bosses have always just stuck with me more because with Dark Souls bosses, I always knew when I was making mistakes. But in Elden Ring, I don't really have that. In Elden Ring, I don't have to drive every time that I die to go back and fight the boss like I did in Dark Souls. In Elden Ring, when I die, I'm just like, Okay, I gotta go back and fight him again. Let's see who kills who this time. And no matter how much I try to learn them, every time it feels like a race to see who's gonna take who out first. Even when I try to be slow and deliberate and learn the bosses, but in Dark Souls, it feels like this slow, methodical dance of death where I'm actually learning the bosses and learning from my mistakes. And like, while you do still have those moments in Elden Ring, it feels different, you know what I mean? Anyway, moving on, that tangent lasted for way too long. We have so many areas to go through, I need to pick up the pace a bit. So, Landel Royal Capital is another one that's gonna go S tier immediately. Morgott was an amazing fight. Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, like the Golden Shadow version of him, that was completely unnecessary. But then, talking about the area itself, like the visuals, the first time you step out of here, and you just overlook the entire city, you see the golden rooftops, the stone dragon, it is beautiful. And the thing is that I love most about it is how the soundtrack, it's so quiet, it's so ambient, you can barely even tell that it's there, but for what little soundtrack is there, just that little bit of music, the few keys you hear here and there just kind of adds to like the majestical, magical feeling as you're taking it all in, taking in the view. Don't even get me started on how massive this place is. It's not big enough to feel like a maze or to where it's like too confusing to get through, but it's just big enough to fill you with wonder even on following playthroughs. I tell you, to this day, I still get lost every time that I go to Landel Royal Capital, and I still love it. Every time I step out there for the first time, it fills me with that same magical feeling I had in the first playthrough. It's kind of similar to when you like first open the door in Limgrave and you step out and just see like the world, like that magical feeling. It's not up to that standard, but it's like, it's really close in Royal Capital. Mistwood, oh gosh, I am blanking. See, there are so many areas in this game that sometimes I'm looking at it and I'm like, was I there before? Even though I know I definitely have been there, it's just, there's so many that I forget what is what. Alright, so Mistwood is a location in Elden Ring. Region is located eastern, oh, it's in Limgrave. Oh, okay, never mind. I know what part this is now. I'll put it in like a C. I mean, it's okay. It's nothing amazing by any means. I don't even think there's any like main bosses there really. Like, it's okay. I mean, it's home to a lot of important entrances to other places. Like, it has the entrance to Nokron underground, and then the Siofa River well is here. But that's all it is really. It's more of like an in-between point. It's not really like a main important area, so that'll stay in C. Mogwin Palace, which I also believe is home to Moog. Gonna go A tier for me. I think this place is really cool, and I love the different aesthetic. It's not something that we've seen in many other Souls games, like the color palette at the very least. I really liked how this place looked. The only reason it's going A is just because of the boss itself. Look, Moog is a decent boss. I can't get past that ceiling stab gimmick. I cannot defend gimmick fights in Souls games. The way I see it, and feel free to disagree, I know all the hardcore Elden Ring fanboys are gonna attack me and jumping down my throat for this one instead of, you know, being an intelligent individual and explaining their stance. They'd rather attack and be toxic, which that's okay, that's on them, whatever. But when I think of a Souls fight and I think of a fair Souls fight, I think that the outcome of the fight should always come down to you and your skill and the time that you've invested into learning that boss. I feel like if you have taken the time, if you have taken the hours, the days, the weeks that it takes to fully learn a Souls boss, then that victory should be granted to you. Furthermore, I think that if you took the time to learn the boss that well, you should be able to get through the boss without taking damage. Because that's how it's been in quite literally like every single From Software fight up to this point. But with Moog, he breaks that rule because he has the ceiling stab move, and you literally cannot avoid it. The only two ways to counter it are either to A, sit there and spam X or square, depending on what console you're on, or B, you get that stupid thing for your Flask of Physic, and I don't understand that. Like, why should it come down to a gimmick of if you drank a certain flask or not? Like, that's never been a thing. And I seen a comment a while ago trying to defend it, being like, well, once you finally find that Flask of Physic, then that's when you have that moment of, oh, that's how I was supposed to do it, that's how I was supposed to learn it. And when I sat there reading that, I was like, no, that's never where that feeling comes from in Souls game. It always comes from you actually overcoming the challenge, not just because you drank a certain Flask of Physic. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, this boss is stupidly easy. The only thing that makes him challenging is a stupid ceiling stab gimmick. It's similar to Malenia. Malenia is an absolute pushover, an absolute joke. The only thing that makes her hard is Waterfowl Dance. Otherwise, she is a joke. And if you go in there with freezing pots and you keep spamming that matter every time that the debuff goes away, well, then she's a cakewalk. That's just my view on it. I'll let the toxic comments roll in now. Nokron is gonna go S tier. You wanna know why? Because not only is this place amazing, but it's also home to Mimic tier. And if y'all know me, I love my Mimic tier. I'm just gonna go ahead and rank like all the underground places right now. Like Noxtella is S tier. Siofa River, S tier. Like all of these underground places are amazing. I mean, they kind of like mesh together and blend together in my mind, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, these places are just absolutely beautiful. If you guys watch the original Elden Ring series, when I went to Siofa River, I literally titled the video, "This Elden Ring area left me speechless," because it did. It's so beautiful. You go down there, you look up at the sky, and I know it's not stars. I don't know what it is on the ceiling skybox of the area, but it looks beautiful. It looks like stars, even though it's not stars. Similar to like Landell, for example, the areas are really big and there's a lot to explore, but it's not too big as to where it feels overwhelming or like a confusing maze. It just feels like it's just the right size. There's just enough to do, and obviously if you do Ronnie's quest, these areas have huge importance in that quest and into getting that ending. And that's one of the things that I love in this game. Like, no matter how big the areas are, no matter how big the world is, they found a way to make almost every inch of the map have some sort of layer of importance to the story or lore in some way. There's very little wasted space in this game. Besides, like, Lake of Rot, for example, this does not need to exist. The game would be fine without this. But otherwise, there is no wasted space. Everything has purpose. Okay, I'm blanking again. Ordina, I've been here. Like, I've been to all of these areas. I'm just forgetting what is what. Oh, it's this place. Yeah, you know what? Oh God, is it as, I do not like this area. The only purpose that this place serves is to be an in-between between the consecrated snowfield and Haligtree, and the puzzle here where you have to light all of the flames and you're getting chased by invisible people and the guys there, like the archers, are shooting at you and melting you in 2 to 3 hits. I cannot stand this place. F tier. Lucaria Academy is gonna go A tier for me. It's a place where I feel like there's a lot more that could have been done with it, but unfortunately the academy part of it. Like, the academy part of it, I feel like they could have done so much more with it. Do you know how cool it would have been to go into this academy and have, like, all these branching paths inside of the actual academy? Like, the academy itself, there's a few branching paths, but for the most part, it's pretty much just a straight shot to Red Wolf or Radagon, and then from there, it's a straight shot out up to Renala. I just wish that there was more inside of the actual academy. Like, I don't know, maybe some quests that involve this place, or just bigger areas in general. I'm not really sure what they could have done, but it's an academy, and if y'all know me, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so as soon as I saw the academy, I was really excited. And while, yes, I know there's more to the area, like outside, and you can go on the rooftops, and you explore around, but that's not what I'm talking about. Like, the area itself is big, but I'm talking about the actual insides and rooms of the academy. With that, it was a little bit of a letdown for me, but the place is still amazing regardless. I just feel like maybe there's a few too many mages, if I'm being honest, but the Renala fight is absolutely wonderful. The spectacle of the Renala fight is great. I love how the first phase is kind of like a callback to Deacons of the Deep, and then the fight itself, it's a solid fight. With all that being said, when you include the academy, the outside areas, and the boss fights, definitely deserves A tier. I would put it S tier, but personal bias and wanting more from the academy keeps it from putting it in S tier. It's gonna go A for me. Deep Root Depths, I don't really remember much about this place. I'm pretty sure this was just tied to Fia's quest and then fighting Fortisax. So with that being said, I mean, the place didn't really serve much purpose besides that. I'm gonna put it in B. Not bad by any means, but it definitely doesn't, like, reach the standards of these places. Redmane Castle is gonna go S tier. Amazing. I really don't even know what to say about this place. The lore, the soundtrack for the place, the atmosphere, the boss fight. Everything about it is S tier. I'm just gonna say this, if you haven't been there before and if you have not experienced the boss fight there before, go do it. I don't care if you play it, if you watch a video on it, experience it somehow. Roundtable Hold is gonna go S tier. It's a solid little hub world. I mean, it's pretty chill. You know what, S tier, I don't know if I can put it there. I'll put it A. It's a decent hub world. It's not a bad area, but, you know, it's nothing more than that. Just like a little safe space. I would deem an S tier hub world to be something like the Firelink Shrines or Majula, but this definitely ain't up to that standard. I'll put it A. Cilia Town of Sorcery, I just found this one to be more annoying than anything. This was really just a quick drop in and drop out area for me so I could get Rock Sling. Maybe there's more to it. Maybe I gotta explore some more, but I'm pretty sure I saw most of what this place had to offer, so I'll put it B. Castle Soul, a decent dungeon. The boss there is cool. I'll put it in A. Yeah, I'll put it in A. It's a good area. That boss still whoops me though, dude. No matter how many times I've beaten this game and no matter how many times I fight him, Frostbite, I'm done. I also like how out of the way this area is, so it's not every player is gonna get to experience it, you know what I mean? Like, you actively have to seek it out, especially on a first playthrough before you get the map opened up. I really like that. It just shows that From Software has a certain level of respect for their players. Like, they aren't gonna hold your hand. It's like, well, it's there, you can miss it. The fact that they're willing to let players possibly miss out on certain content and leave the responsibility of finding it up to the players rather than holding their hand and throwing a bunch of, like, map markers on it, I love that. Crumbling Firm Missoula is gonna go S tier for me. Once again, great visuals, great boss fights. The only thing that I don't like about this place is how many dragons are around here, especially that one right before Malekith, how he spams like all sorts of lightning beams at you and kind of makes it a nightmare to go through. I mean, the lightning beams aren't too hard to dodge, but like on that one run through where you get unlucky and it ends up striking you, it's a little annoying. But otherwise, the bosses here are great. You got Blasudasax, you got the Godskin Duo, they're okay. And then you got Malekith, which is a top 5 From Software fight for me. Great area, great visuals, and it also gives me vibes of like Dragon Eerie. I've said that a couple times from like Dark Souls 2. Swamp of Ionia, C tier. Ruined Shroon Precipice. I'm honestly having trouble remembering what this area is. Looks to be a part of Altus Plateau, so I guess I'll put it S tier because I love all of Altus Plateau. I mean, if anybody could let me know, like, what is actually... Oh, Magma War... Oh, this is the back route to Altus Plateau. Oh, yeah, that definitely deserves S tier then. I love that as well. In every playthrough since I learned of the back way, I never do the medallion, like the Grand Lifted Dectus anymore. I always go the back way now. I just love that feeling of discovery when you traverse that whole thing, fight the Magma Worm, and then you, like, climb up the ladder and just emerge, and you see all of Altus Plateau there. Absolutely love that. Stormvale Castle is gonna go S tier for me. Great dungeon, great enemy placement. That's one thing I love about this area. The enemy placement here is amazing. Some of the best in the game. It feels like a classic Dark Souls area. It's like, it's laid out just perfectly enough without being too insanely difficult and without being too easy. It's a great starter area. It's very well balanced in the early game. And obviously, Godric. Godric is just chef's kiss. Honestly, if Godric happened later in the game and was just like a little bit more difficult, I think he would be in most people's top 10 fights from the game, at least. That boss is slept on way too much, but at the same time, it is also kind of the fault of him being early in the game and just kind of... He's actually easier than Margit, at least in most cases, depending on if you leveled up enough before you got there. Caria Manor, it'll go B for me. There wasn't a whole lot there. The bosses there were decent, but were pretty easy. This is also home to Ronnie's Quest, so, you know, we do gotta put some respect on it for that. And, well, there is some great story and lore moments here. So, you know what? Yeah, I'll keep that an A. Volcano Manor is gonna go S tier for me. Again, the quest, the bosses, and the fact that there's a whole underground hidden town tied to this quest that is so easily missable. I also loved getting to play Agent 47 for the people here at the Volcano Manor. That was pretty fun. Rykar boss fight speaks for itself. Chef kiss. Grand Lifts. I don't know. They'll go A. I mean, they're just lifts. Put it S just because they're important. They take us to important areas, so I'll put it S. I don't know. There's not else to them, really. Nicholas no. F tier, F tier. Screw the Howling Tree. On repeat playthroughs, when you know what you're doing, it's not bad, but on a first go-through, I don't wish that on my worst enemy. Frenzied Flame Prescription. That's gonna go S tier. A. If y'all haven't done the Frenzied Flame ending, and if y'all don't understand what this means, go do it. It's pretty simple. You just gotta traverse the sewers of Altus Plateau, and then you get naked and touch a door, and then you're able to see this cutscene. 10 out of 10. Definitely recommend. Ainsel River is gonna go B for me. Not a bad area, but not very memorable. I mean, there's a few bosses here, but it's okay. It's not as good as, like, Nox Stellar Seal for River. Like, it's not bad, but it's also not as good as any of the ones in the A tier, so I'll put it in B. Also, just remember that most of the areas in this game are, like, near perfection, so if one's in C, it still means that it's, like, it's pretty amazing. It's just, it's not as amazing as the ones up here, but the ones in F tier, well, yeah, these speak for themselves. These are actually just genuinely terrible. Bestial Sanctum. I am having trouble remembering what this one is, too. Oh, wait, I remember this area. Was there anything important here? Anything, creatures, and no regular... Oh, okay, yeah, there wasn't really anything that important up here. That's why I'm not remembering it. I'll put it like a solid B, I guess. Stormhill. It's just like the in-between between Limgrave and the Stormvale Castle, right? I don't know. A. Again, it's part of the opening area in Limgrave, and all of Limgrave is S tier for me all day. I honestly could not think of a better way to open up Elden Ring. Limgrave was the perfect opening area in almost every single aspect for Elden Ring. It taught the player everything that they needed to know without holding their hand and gave them a feel for the game and how progression in the game was going to work. It's also not overly confusing trying to figure out where you're supposed to go. The Shaded Castle, C, I guess. I don't know. This place wasn't very memorable here. The only thing here is the boss. Outside of the boss, there's like nothing to this area. Cool area, but it doesn't even touch the ones in the B tier. For Belfry, Freeze is cool. It'll go B for me. The only reason that I can even think to go here is to get the key so then you can warp back to the Grafted Scion, which I always love that whenever you die at the beginning of like a Souls game and then you have to warp back later to try and fight them again. I like stuff like that. It'll go B. Windmill Village will go B for me. Again, not too much memorable happening up here. Not a bad area by any means, but the only reason I can think to even go up here would be to get the Common Azure spell. Outside of that, this is just an in-between point between Altus Plateau and the Volcano Manor, really. Divine Towers, I'm pretty sure their only purpose is to activate your Great Runes, and since Great Runes are pretty important, I'll put it in B, but besides that, not too much happening there. Castle Morn, I've been there. What is it? What is that place? Leonine, oh, Leonine Misbegotten, yes! Okay, now I remember it. S tier, we all love the Porcupine Sword. Once again, another amazing dungeon found in the game, and you can get to it pretty early on without too much trouble. And the fact that you get a sword that looks like a porcupine for killing the boss there, it deserves the S tier. Actually, no. In good faith, can I say S tier? Yeah, it'll go A tier. And actually, while I'm thinking of it, we're gonna drop the Grand Lives down to B, because even though they are important to getting to, like, you know, other areas in the game, it wouldn't be fair to, like, put it up there in the S tier. So I'll leave that in B, and then Castle Morn definitely deserves A. Flame Peak and the Forge of the Giants. Oh, God. Fire Giant. I want to put in an F tier, but that wouldn't be fair, because even though I despise Fire Giant with a passion and think that everything is wrong with him from a game design perspective, that really wouldn't be fair, so we'll put it in C tier because the area itself is cool. I like the aesthetic of it. I love snowy areas in games. I hate Fire Giant, but after beating him a couple times, I can live with him even if he is a terrible boss. It'll stay in the C tier. And then the Subterranean Shunning Grounds. This is just where you fight Moog when you're on the way to the Frenzied Flame prescription, so B, I don't know. That Moog fight, it was alright. It wasn't anything special. Parkour area here does kind of suck, though, so you know what? That's gonna go C. The parkour isn't terrible. I hate parkour in Souls games, I'm gonna be honest. Can't wait to hear the reactions on this one, but this is my tier list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. Please keep the toxicity to a minimum. I know some people won't be able to help themselves, but I look forward to those of you that are actually mature enough to carry out a conversation and share your opinions. Today, we will be ranking Elden Ring waifus. So obviously, as you guys probably know, today is Valentine's Day. So first off, happy Valentine's Day. Just remember, if you are spending today alone, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Girlfriends, boyfriends, anything of the like, look, you're not missing out on much if you are single. All they do is mope, complain, and drain you of your money. I have been single since 2019, and if you do the math, that is 4 years, and this has been the happiest 4 years of my life. And especially if you're still in like middle or high school, please do not worry about dating. Just focus on your grades, focus on your work, just get through school. That is all that matters right now. Y'all don't even understand love at that age. Not worth it. It's not worth the time, not worth the heartbreak, it's not worth the depression afterwards. Focus on you, your schoolwork, and your hobbies, whether that be watching YouTube videos, playing games, or ranking Elden Ring waifus. So first up, we got Roderica is how I think you say her name. She's gonna go into the A tier. Not only is she a cute waifu, but she also helps you level up your spirit ashes, like your mimics, your Black Knife Tiches. And if you've played Elden Ring, then you would know that is one of the most important things in the game. Sure, you can beat the game without summon ashes, but let's be honest, on that first playthrough, having them is a huge help. So if we're going off of New Game Zero standards, she is an A tier waifu, no doubt. Yo, do they really got Dung Eater in the waifu ranking? I think I'm gonna put it in D. See, this one just came like preset like S, A, B, C, and D. Originally I was gonna make this at an F, but none of the waifus in this game are necessarily F tier. You know what? Let's rename D. We're gonna put it as a pass. You know, anything from C to S would be a smash, but then, you know, D, I don't know if I really want to be smashing Dung Eater. Next up, I got Selin the Sorcerer. She is also gonna go B tier, yeah, maybe A tier. I don't know. Common Azure is tied to her quest, and her herself, I mean, it's a magical waifu. Oh man, this one's really hard. You know what? She is a really unique waifu. You know, she's got the fancy helmet on, and again, her quest does get you one of the most broken spells in the game. So yeah, I think she deserves A tier waifu. Irina, I think I'm gonna put into a C tier. She's not a bad waifu by any means, but she's definitely not as memorable as the other waifus on the list. And the only things that you really get from her quest are like a +8 halberd and the Shabribri grapes. Again, none of these waifus are inherently bad by any means. There's just some that are better than others, and she just happens to go C tier for me personally. Next up, we got Anastasia Tarnished Eater. Ooh, that one's gonna go A tier. Look, even though she doesn't really have any implications in the lore or overall like importance in the story, she's got that butcher's knife. She's ready to fight. I love me a good waifu that's a little feisty. You've just been going throughout Mount Gelmir minding your own business. Next thing you know, waifu pops up with the butcher's knife ready to throw hands. So it's good to have a waifu that knows how to fight, knows how to stand their ground. Next up, we got Fia. Ooh, I really want to put this one in S tier. I think I'm gonna put it in the A tier. The only reason I'm putting her in the A tier is the fact that every time that she gives you a hug, hug, she also gives you an STD. Sure, you receive the item immediately after standing up so then you can cure that health debuff, but considering the fact that the debuff even exists in the first place, I'm gonna have to just keep her in A tier. If it wasn't for that, I would put her in S tier since her quest is relatively important and leads into one of the endings for the game. But considering the fact that she gives me a strange itch every time that I hug her, just gonna stay in the A tier. Millicent is another one that's gonna go A tier. Absolutely loved her quest line. And I mean, look at, no. We need to do a Google search. We need to like blow her face up a bit. Would y'all just take a second to look at this girl? Like, she is absolutely adorable, okay? She deserves the A tier. And then obviously once you complete her quest, you get the Rotten Wing Sword insignia, which that talisman in itself would be enough for me to put her in the A tier. But I mean, okay, just look at her. She's adorable. She deserves the A tier. One of my favorite waifus in the game. Oh god, the finger reader. Pass. Oh god, you know, she's cool. She gives you, you know, the remembrances, and that's nice and all, but definitely not a smash. I mean, I'll leave this up to you guys. I mean, would y'all smash? I mean, that's a pass for me, but I mean, if you, everybody's got their preferences, I guess. She be looking at you. Give me more. No thank you, no thank you. Next up we got Nefeli. She's gonna go B to C tier for me. She's pretty cool, she helps you take down Godric, but you know, not as memorable as any of these. And you know, she's a nice waifu, but just doesn't hold a candle to any of these other ones. Again, I'm tempted to put her at least in B considering how useful she can be in the Godric fight, but I think I'm gonna leave her in C. Raya, this is an S tier waifu, our first S tier for the video. Absolutely love Raya. I gotta hear from you guys down below. Which waifu form do you prefer? Do you prefer human Raya or do you prefer lizard Raya? I love her energy, I love her voice in the game. She got that real cute, like almost like anime girl type voice, you know, like that stereotypical, more like higher pitched, soft anime girl voice. I mean, it is kind of sad that when she's in her human form, she kind of has the look like she's been doing the gamer lean for her entire life and never took care of her posture. She's just like, hello, I am Raya. That being said, I absolutely love her and her quest, so she deserves the S tier. Next up, we got Renala. I kind of want to put her in A, just because obviously after you beat her, you get the ability to respec. Furthermore, I love the Renala boss fight. The first phase is pretty good. Then the second phase starts, you're teleported to that special arena, and it's just, it is amazing. This is a really hard one. Oh man, this is a tough one. In terms of waifu cuteness, what are y'all thinking? Do y'all think that this one deserves the A tier? I mean, considering the fact that, again, the boss fight is so good and the respec ability afterwards. A tier, B tier, I'm feeling a B on this one, but I feel like if something like Roderica makes it into the A tier, I feel like Renala should. Actually, maybe I should move these around. I think that should go B tier. Well, wait, if I put her B tier, I feel like, I'm questioning my rankings. Okay, I gotta look at this from New Game Zero perspective. So again, yeah. Roderica for New Game Zero at least definitely deserves A tier waifu. Definitely deserves A tier waifu. Common Deserve New Game Zero could be absolutely broken. Anastasia, just considering the fact that there's really nothing else to Anastasia's character besides the fact that she tries to kill you, I guess I gotta drop her into a B. But again, this list is subjective, so I don't know. Maybe I should keep her in A. No, I gotta be honest. Even though I like the feistiness, she definitely doesn't hold a candle to the other ones. It hurts. I'm sorry, but you gotta go B. I'm cool with leaving Renala in A. She deserves the A tier. She does enough in the game that I can say she definitely deserves the A tier. Latenna, I think I'm gonna put into the B tier. Just look, again, we're coming at this from New Game Zero perspective, and by the time that you finish your quest, you're able to get like a Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone out of it, and in New Game Zero, that's pretty important. Furthermore, when you look at her, just look. She wouldn't hurt a fly. She's so calm, so relaxed. Honestly, if I'm being honest, she looks baked out of her mind right here. Then you get this like iconic image of her chilling with the wolf. I'm cool with leaving her in a B. Ooh, next up we got Hyena. I think I'm gonna put this one into the B tier. Just due to the fact that she's tied to the Frenzy Flame ending, and Frenzy Flame is easily my favorite ending in the game. That is also due to the fact that when you do that ending, you're able to save Melina. But once you complete her quest, you get the Frenzy Flame seal, and I mean, look at her. Again, Elden Ring is just full of great waifus. There's very few Elden Ring waifus that are just inherently bad by any means, you know? Oh man, look at this fan art. This is actually really good. Again, considering her ties to the Frenzy Flame ending and the fact that she gives you the Frenzy Flame seal, I'm gonna leave her in a B. Next up, we got Ronnie the Witch. She's gonna go into the S tier. You literally get to put a ring on her finger. No other Elden Ring waifu lets you do that. In terms of visuals as well, I really love Ronnie's ending. Like, let's see if we can pull up a screenshot of it real quick. That visual at the end of the game where Ronnie's like standing in front of the moon and you got the music swelling. This screenshot right here. I absolutely love this visual. It is beautiful. And then obviously there's so many great items tied to Ronnie's quest. You got Blide's armor set, the Dark Moon Greatsword, along with access to all of these different areas in the game. It's also tied to one of the best bosses in the game, Radon. And Ronnie herself, just look at her. She's a good waifu. I mean, I'm sure you can already see all the fan art over here. I'm not going to highlight it too much so YouTube doesn't strike me with the yellow symbol, but seriously, she's a good waifu. And plus, she's got 4 hands. Do I need to explain that? Next up, we got Millennia. Oh, yeah, we're gonna put her in the S tier. She definitely deserves S tier waifu. I am Millennia, Blade of Mikola. Like, that is S tier waifu material. I gotta be careful with what pictures of Millennia I show here, but she is definitely S tier waifu material. I mean, you look at her, she, like, yes, especially in her second phase, perfect. Like, just look at her, yes. And then second phase, S tier waifu. And then when you go back to the first ranking in the video, when I was ranking Anastasia Tarnish Eater, how I was saying, I like when my waifus know how to stand the ground, know when to fight back, get a little feisty. And Millennia, yeah, she definitely does that. Waterfowl, anybody? Plus, she's got a prosthetic arm. Need I say any more? Last but certainly not least, I saved my favorite waifu for last. Melina, you are gonna go straight to the top of S tier. My favorite waifu in all of Elden Ring. Can we take a minute just to look at her? That is an S tier waifu. She's absolutely adorable. From the start of the game, she's ready to fight by your side. Obviously, towards the later half of the game, she fights Morgoth with you. No one can forget when she tells you to your face, yeah, you got no maidens, but then she offers to be your maiden. Like, you cannot beat that. That is top tier waifu material. She is ready to be your waifu. Obviously, if you choose a certain ending in the game, she ends up trying to kill you. But again, that goes back into what I've been saying this whole time. I like the waifus that get feisty, even if it means they're trying to kill me. I'm into that. So with that being said, when it comes down to quests, feistiness, looks, just all around waifu-ness, she deserves top of the S tier. She is my personal favorite waifu in the entire From Software catalog. Now I definitely want to hear from you guys. How would you guys rank these waifus? Which one is your personal favorite? Whatever it is, I'd love to hear from you guys. Like I said at the top of this video, it's okay to be single, not only on Valentine's Day, but just to be single, period. Like I said, girlfriends and boyfriends, they're way too much money, and the last 4 years that I've been single, it's been the happiest 4 years of my life. At the end of the day, all that truly matters is our waifus. Today we are going to be ranking all of the Souls games. I'm sorry that I still sound a little weird in today's video. I'm feeling a bit better than I was yesterday, but I'm still feeling pretty under the weather, and if you see me not smiling in this video, it's because this bit of skin right here in my upper lip is still really chapped, so it actually puts me in physical pain to smile. Usually I try to smile a good bit in my videos, but today I'm going to try to not smile at all. Anyway, this tier list is going to be a little bit different than usual. This tier list is going to be nothing more than just like a visual indicator of where I'm ranking the games, because this isn't going to be the traditional SABCD. We're gonna be ranking it like from worst to best. Like in 7th place, this game goes here. In 6th place, this game goes here. Does that make sense? And out of all of these games, the only one that I have not played yet is Sekiro. And look, I know it's made by From Software and it's like in the Soulsborne category. But from everything I've heard about this game, it almost seems like Sekiro isn't really even like a Souls game. Like it isn't really even much of an RPG. It's basically just like a fast-paced combat game with some familiar Souls elements. That's just what I've heard, at least. I don't know if that's true. I obviously haven't played it yet, so I can't really judge that. I also realized they have the Demon Souls remake here. I have not played the remake yet, so I'm gonna put that in didn't play because I've only played the original. I do not have a PS5 yet. Coming in at the absolute bottom of my ranking, we have Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. Do not get this confused with Dark Souls 2 Vanilla. This is Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, the worst edition of Dark Souls 2. I'm not gonna go too in-depth on each game because I don't want this to be like an hour-long video. Dark Souls 2 in itself is a very flawed game, and Dark Souls 2 did nothing but amplify those issues. Enemy spam is one of the biggest issues I have with this game, especially. I'll cover more of some of the more fundamental flaws when we rank Dark Souls 2, but in terms of Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, I talked about it in my video called Dark Souls 2 After 100 Hours of Elden Ring. In the opening area alone, when you get up to that corpse by the tree, there's literally 12 enemies just sitting there waiting for you. In what world should there be 12 swift enemies waiting for you in an opening area of a Souls game? It's not to a manageable degree either. It's just 12 enemies just swarming you. Like, why? And then you have Iron Keep. Need I mention Iron Keep? Shrine of Amana? Nobody likes Shrine of Amana. In Scholar of the First Sin, that is. Because in Dark Souls 2 Vanilla, those areas are actually quite manageable. And since I seem to keep bringing up Dark Souls 2 Vanilla, we might as well rank it now. That would go 6th place for me, honestly, right above Scholar of the First Sin. Vanilla does everything that Scholar of the First Sin edition did, but did it better, even though Vanilla came before Scholar. The enemy spam, while it still exists in a few areas, it is nowhere near as egregious. Item placements also make a lot more sense in Vanilla. And overall, the game is just a lot more tolerable in the Vanilla version. However, that being said, there are still many fundamental flaws with the game, the agility stat even existing in the first place. To this day, I still don't understand why they decided to implement that into the game. Many of the areas are absolutely garbage in this game, Black Gulch, Earthen Peak. In terms of world design, now, while world design and cohesion of the world doesn't necessarily detract or add to my overall gameplay experience, it does matter from an immersion standpoint. So when you get on an elevator to go from Earthen Peak up to Iron Keep, it takes me out of the game and ruins my immersion. There's just an overall lack of cohesion, and I found it very hard to get immersed into this game compared to any of the other Souls games. I mean, there's still a lot of engrossing and immersive moments sprinkled throughout the game, do not get me wrong. Just because these games are ranking at the bottom does not mean they are bad by any means. I said this in a YouTube video a while ago, but just because I say that Dark Souls 2 is my least favorite From Software game, you gotta remember, it's still a From Software game, which means at the end of the day, it's still an absolutely amazing game. It's just that there's a lot of fundamental flaws with this game, and this goes beyond, you know, the small things that I talked about, like agility stats and some of the more questionable areas in the game. We also got to consider the bosses. The bosses in this game are an absolute joke. None of them pose any threats at all. The only threats that occur in this game are from the areas. All in all, at this point, I'm just hoping that it can get the Blue Point remake treatment at some point, so this game can hopefully at least come close to its original vision, or at least utilize some of the potential that this game most certainly has. Next up, in number 5, I'm going to put Demon Souls. I thoroughly enjoyed and still do enjoy Demon Souls quite a bit. Now, there is a few issues with this game. First things first, there is literally just missing content in the game. The 6th Archstone, it still saddens me that there wasn't ever a DLC or an update or anything they could have done to add it into the game. I understand there was time constraints, but it's just, every time I play that game, I just have that overwhelming feeling that something's missing, because the 6th Archstone is there, it's still in the game, it's just, the content had to be cut due to time constraints. And it's honestly sad, because honestly, if it wasn't for that and a few other problems that I have with the game that we're about to discuss, I honestly feel like it could have ranked a bit higher. A few other problems I have with the game, which this issue also affected Dark Souls 2, and is part of the reason why I also ranked Dark Souls 2 as low, but it's the HP loss after death. I do not like that mechanic at all. It was in Demon Souls, I didn't like it there. In Dark Souls 2, I did not like it. In Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, I especially didn't like it. Roll tendency was just more annoying than an actual fun gameplay mechanic, in my opinion at least. I also really didn't like the over-encumbering mechanic. However, I heard that the remake actually fixed that. I'm glad that they at least addressed it there. I also wasn't a huge fan of the bosses. Most of the bosses in this game come down to like gimmicks or puzzle bosses. Outside of that though, I absolutely adore and love this game. The atmosphere in the game is just top notch, even to this day, the original one. I promise you, if you turn on a PS3 and you pop in the original Demon Souls, you will have no problem getting immersed immediately, even if the graphics and gameplay is a little bit dated. The ambient noises and ambient soundtrack in the game, the way each of the levels in the world is designed as a whole, enemies, enemy design, enemy placement, everything just feels like it belongs. It feels so tight-knit. It is such a great experience. I'm also a little biased because I grew up with like older RPGs back in the day, and I just love that feeling of those. It has that like classic feeling, like 5th/6th/early 7th gen RPG, where it's like, it's a little clunky, but it still feels satisfying. Similar to something, say, like Dragon's Dogma, or heck, maybe even something like an Oblivion or a Skyrim to an extent. I'm not saying the combat is anything comparable to that. I'm just saying in the jank that it has. I won't talk about this game too much more because the original is an exclusive to PS3 and the remake is an exclusive to PS5, and I know there's a lot of people that haven't gotten to play the game yet that still really want to. Just for the sake of spoilers, we're going to move on from that, but I highly recommend checking out either the original or the remake. Both are great options. Next up, this is going to blow some people's mind, but at number 4, we have Elden Ring. Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this, and I've spoke my piece on Elden Ring, so we're not going to linger on this any longer than we have to. For me, when it comes to Souls games and what I look for in Souls games, I like the Metroidvania style level design of the original games and the more linear path. There's just something I really love and adore about that tight-knit experience that you got from classic From Software games. Now, I'm not saying that the open world is bad by any means. It is far from bad, and everything that they accomplished with this game is nothing short of a miracle in today's, like, modern gaming scene. Personally, it's just not for me, and it's not what I look for in a Souls game personally. I still enjoyed the game, and I had a lot of fun with it, but comparing it to the other games, I really didn't enjoy it as much on my first playthrough, and I definitely did not enjoy it anywhere near as much on the following playthroughs. This game's replayability for me is just, it's nowhere near any of From Software's previous games, not by a long shot. I remember my original Elden Ring playthrough, I had so many people yelling at me in my comments. They're like, dude, you need to slow down. You need to go explore the open world. Whereas all I wanted to do was just tackle the next main boss, see what's gonna happen next in the story. I was just trying to go from Margit
to Godric, to Renala, up to Altos Plateau. I wanted to keep moving the plot. I wanted to see what happened next. I was playing it for that classic Souls experience. You move at your own pace. If you want to stick to the main path, okay. If you want to veer off and do optional stuff, I mean, you can, but by no means is it required. Whereas in Elden Ring, if you don't veer off and go off and do the optional stuff, you're definitely going to be struggling. That's why the motto with Elden Ring is, well, if you're struggling, just go do some dungeons, go level up, and then come back later. But see, for somebody like me, that's just not really my type of thing. If I'm playing a Souls game, I like that tight-knit, linear, intentional experience. And again, this is all just personal preference. This is just my opinion. Personally, I just didn't find this game very replayable, and even by the time that I got to the end of this game, I found myself so burnt out on reading through comments of people trying to tell me what to go find and do out in the open world, and trying to find myself things to do in the open world. Like, I didn't care about any of that. I wanted to stick to the main path and have a nice experience. I don't know, it's just going and exploring through an open world for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours on end just doesn't really appeal to me, considering the fact that there's not much to this open world. Now, I know I'm gonna get so much backlash for saying that, but seriously, in a combat-centric game, what else is there to do in the open world besides loot up items and materials and runes, fight enemies, find dungeons, or ride around on Torrent? There's really, there's nothing else to it. Riding around on Torrent is just another form of traversal, so we might as well not even count that. You're either killing enemies, you're going out and seeking out certain items, or farming up runes, or, I don't know, maybe you're doing like an arbitrary task for an NPC quest, like, say you're doing Raya's quest, you need to go up north like 500 feet to the guy's shack, get the necklace, take it back to Raya. Maybe you're doing like small busy work like that. But outside of that, there's really not much to do in this massive open world. The open world really just serves as a gateway point between A and B, along with serving like 500 different options between A and B that honestly just get really repetitive after a while. Most of the dungeons are copied and pasted. A lot of the bosses in the dungeons are copied and pasted. Honestly, by the time I got to Altus Plateau, I stopped messing around with Everjails and the dungeons and stuff. I got so burnt out on it because they just weren't interesting to me anymore. And there's a few side paths that I absolutely love. Like, you have Castle Sol and then Carrion Manor. Like, those areas are absolutely amazing, and the fact that they're entirely optional still just blows my mind. And then like Volcano Manor and the whole like town underground, like those areas are absolutely amazing. And honestly, areas like the town underground, I actually really liked areas like that because it felt more like a traditional Souls area. Very tight-knit, very intentional. It felt very connected. Whereas when you're in the open world, like Liurnia or the Weeping Peninsula, Limgrave, and you're just out there, it's just kind of aimlessly wander around a torrent, occasionally hitting a sheep or a roaming guard. I don't know, after the first playthrough, it's just, I don't know. And as weird as this may sound, my favorite part of Elden Ring was the last quarter of the game. The last quarter of the game that everybody says, oh, Elden Ring wasn't the same after that point, it just wasn't as good, it was a boss rush. That was the part that I liked. From Farum Azula until the credits, that is the only part of Elden Ring that keeps me replaying it. That whole last segment, from the time that you defeat the fire giant and then you go up to the thing and you watch that cutscene and then you're teleported to Farum Azula, I love that last stretch of the game because Farum Azula in itself, it's like a nice combination of new and old where it feels like a classic Souls area with some of the Elden Ring elements, implementing some more like the platforming and jumping elements that were introduced in Elden Ring, despite one of the bosses not being so great, Godskin Duo. Otherwise, I love the flow of the area and the game for that last bit. That was my favorite part of the game. Anyway, we talked about Elden Ring for way too long, so at number 3, we're going to put Bloodborne. And this is funny because I'm literally I'm a little bit past halfway in Bloodborne right now, okay? And that first half of the game, I have enjoyed this more than the 50 plus episodes that I have made on Elden Ring. There's not much I can say about Bloodborne that hasn't already been said. I love the combat in the game and how it pushes you to be aggressive with the rally mechanic. Bosses all keep you on your toes, or it's always just a heart-racing battle to the death every time that you encounter a boss. Like right now, I can finally look back on bosses like Gascoigne, Vicar Amelia, and such, and it's just like, those are some of my favorite fights from Software now. Do they rank in my top 5 or top 10 bosses from all of From Software? No, not necessarily, but there's also like a whole other half of the game that I haven't seen yet, so, you know, I know that the best is yet to come. Along with the overall graphics and visuals of the game, the soundtrack. Even though this game is somewhat lacking in build variety compared to the other Souls games, I feel like that's almost a good thing because it allowed them to hone in on the builds and weapons that are available in the game and refine them to such a point that everything feels viable and balanced and satisfying. No matter what path or weapon you choose in this game, it will all pay off off, and they will all reward you greatly as long as you put the time and upgrade materials into the weapons that you choose. And like I said, to go on any more about this game would just be rehashing what has already been said. It is an absolutely phenomenal game, and I honestly, it is in my top 3 From Software games, and I haven't even beaten it yet. It's such an amazing game, and it almost makes me not want a Bloodborne 2 just because this game is so fantastic that I wonder, like, would a Bloodborne 2 just tarnish its legacy? Like, what if we get a Bloodborne 2 and it turns out like a Dark Souls 2? I'm not saying it would, but it almost makes me appreciate this for what it is and just want this to be like the one Bloodborne experience just because it's that good. Can't wait to finish my playthrough of this game, and I don't think it's going to end up ranking any higher just for certain personal reasons with these last 2 games, but it'll always be in the top 3, no doubt. Next up, we got Dark Souls 3. It ended off my favorite From Software trilogy. Out of all the From Software games, I am most certainly a Souls guy above anything else. Dark Souls 3 was a beautiful blend of everything old and new. It took some of the combat mechanics from Bloodborne in terms of implementing more dodging and quicker combat. Build variety was as great as it always has been in any other Souls game up to that point. In terms of bosses, like, overall, I think this game still has my favorite bosses to fight out of any Souls game. Most of the areas are pretty great in this game too, though there are a few stinkers. I think like Farron Keep, Smoldering Lake. But aside from those few stinker areas, most of the areas in this game are absolutely phenomenal, and I love the callbacks to the older games with like Anor Londo, and then obviously the whole final battle is just one big callback to the end of Dark Souls 1. Words cannot describe my love and appreciation for Dark Souls 3. After playing through Dark Souls 2, I had kind of lost hope in From Software, honestly, because up to this point, okay, you gotta remember, I just started playing From Software games back in October. I played Dark Souls 1, hopped immediately to Dark Souls 2. I beat Dark Souls 2, and at that point, I was just kind of ready to give up, but then Dark Souls 3 restored my love and kept me going up to this point now, where, well, I've played basically every single From Software Soulsborne type game besides Sekiro. Fun fact about me, you guys may not have known, Soul of Cinder, the final boss in this game, that is actually my favorite From Software fight to date. That boss overall is just perfect to me. The aesthetics of the boss, the visuals of the boss, the lore, the soundtrack, the gameplay mechanics, it is just through and through my favorite boss in From Software history, period. And one other fun fact about me, I figured I'd mention real quick before we rank the final game. I have been playing From Software games longer than I realized. When I started playing Dark Souls 1 back in October, I thought that was my first From Software game. Little did I know that Armored Core was made by From Software. I am a huge Armored Core fan. I have been playing Armored Core for years. I played the crap out of Armored Core 4 on my PS3. I had no idea that was From Software. Metal Wolf Chaos. I also did not know that was From Software. Another game I love. Anyway, fun facts and all that aside, yeah, it's obvious what goes number 1. For me, it is Dark Souls 1. This is a combination of things. I've spoken my piece on Dark Souls 1 many times, so I'll try to keep this as short and sweet as possible. This was my first From Software experience, and it was nothing short of magical. It also came into my life at a time when I most certainly needed it most. I know this is like the most cliche thing in the world, but it really did. I was going through a lot at the time, emotionally, and just real life, I had a lot going on. And this game, the biggest lesson that I took away from this game was that no matter how hard life gets and no matter what stands in your way, you can always knock it down. You can always overcome it. There is always a way. You will always triumph as long as you try hard enough. Sometimes it'll take everything that you have, but as long as you fight and push with everything that you've got and you don't let go of hope, you will always overcome what stands in your way. Now, I know this is probably stretching the original intention of the artistic message of Dark Souls 1, but the way that I interpreted it, because again, video games are art, and art is entirely left up to the interpretation of the person receiving or consuming the art. I look at Dark Souls 1 and its world as a whole as not necessarily a reflection, but just like, I don't even know what the word is called. Not personification, but whatever it's called. As we'll just call it an image, I guess, or a reflection of life, and then all of the bosses and hurdles in the game are almost like the challenges and things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Each of the bosses to me just kind of resemble like these everyday hurdles or certain challenges that you're going through in your life or whatever's knocking you down, and you gotta try your best. You gotta do everything you can to overcome it, get through it, and move on. Because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, as long as you give it your all, and as long as you fight as hard as you can, you'll always make it through to the other side. Well, I could go on and on talking about this game and how great all of its areas are and how great the bosses are and this, that, and the other. Obviously, there's a few down moments like Lost Izalith, Bed of Chaos, like, you know, and the last half of the game as a whole, it's not as tight-knit as the first half of the game, but I still thoroughly enjoy it, if I'm being honest. For me, the only really, like, bad area in this game would be Lost Izalith and Bed of Chaos. I really don't like that boss in that area, but otherwise, I love this game through and through. Anyway, yeah, this is my ranking for all of the Souls games. Now I want to hear from you guys down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How would you rank the games? Whatever you're thinking, please let me know. So as you guys probably know, I've done a ton of ranking videos in the past, and there's been one that I've been wanting to do for a while, though I just haven't been able to do it due to the fact that I hadn't beaten all the Souls games until recently, and that is ranking every final boss from all of the Souls games. So the only one that I haven't fought yet is actually the final boss of Sekiro, and I also haven't played Demon Souls Remake, but I feel like Demon Souls Remake, it's the exact same as the original Demon Souls, so I don't really feel like it matters that much. And plus, let's be honest with ourselves, Sekiro is not a Souls game. It's really hard for me to like rank or compare Sekiro to any of the other Souls games because again, it's not really a Souls game. It's honestly just an entirely different beast on its own. Anyway, I haven't really given this any prior thought before starting recording, but if I'm gonna be honest right off the top of the dome, I think Demon Souls deserves the worst final boss. Look, I know in terms of the lore and the story, you know, it was supposed to be a pitiful final boss. Normally, I would say that the boss was supposed to be a shell of its former self, but in this case, it's more like a little glob of goo compared to what it used to be. I don't know, it's just like this little sloth slimy thing that like flops all over the ground. I don't know, it doesn't even hurt you. I mean, it might hurt you, I'm not sure. When I fought it, I just went in there with my big Oonga Boonga sword and I took him down in a couple of hits, so I don't know if it actually has any moves. For me, the actual final boss, at least in my playthrough, was Old King Allant. But yeah, the King Allant that you find like right at the end of the game before the credits, yeah, no thank you. That's gonna stay at the bottom. I think next up out of all of these, I really gotta give it to Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. I mean, the final bosses in these are technically the same. I mean, sure, if you do like certain things, you can get the one boss to spawn in Scholar of the First Sin. I can't even remember what his name is. I fought him like one time, and even then in itself, it wasn't a very revolutionary fight. I mean, if we want to rank them separately, then like, yeah, sure, I would probably say that that boss was better. What was that? I can't even remember what the boss's name was. I gotta look this up. Aldia. Okay, yeah, that's what it was. Everybody was like, that's the real final boss of Scholar, man. You gotta get that one. I did a whole nother playthrough of the Scholar of the First Sin, and I honestly regretted it. That boss was so weak. Though if I was to choose between that or Nishandra, I would definitely choose that one because Nishandra doesn't even pose a threat. You just gotta circle around her, watch out for some of the dark magic she casts, but otherwise you just gotta spin in circles and slash at her. She spins around and follows you. It was definitely quite the letdown when I got to it. Ooh, which one deserves to go? You know what? Oh, man, you know what? I think I gotta give it to Elden Ring. It's just the final boss in this game, it really, no pun intended, tarnished the experience for me a bit. If the final boss in Elden Ring would have only been Radagon, I honestly think it would have had potential to possibly be number one for me. I mean, I don't know, it's really hard to beat my number one spot, but it probably would have honestly went number two. But the fact that you have to fight Radagon and then it takes you right into Elden Beast, and like now that I know Elden Beast and I know Radagon, like the fight isn't that bad, and in fact, in my most recent New Game Zero run, I beat them first try. But still, even despite that, now that I know the fight, now that I know how to take it on a bit more efficiently, it's just, I don't know, there's something about Elden Beast, it's just, it never really clicked with me. Maybe it's the fact that it runs away from you so much, like, in terms of spectacle, thematics, OST, like, quite literally everything about the fight screams S tier, but there's, like, certain mechanics in the fight, and the fact that you can't use Torn, and the fact that the Elden Beast runs away from you so much. Honestly, if the Elden Beast didn't run away from you so much, I don't think the fight would be that bad, and in fact, I think it still would have had potential to be in the second, like, number 2 spot for me. However, due to the fact that the fight drags on way longer than it should sometimes, just because the Elden Beast has the tendency to just run away, it's unfortunately gonna take the number 4 spot for me. But, I mean, I don't know, Radagon is really good. I might have to do a bit of a re-ranking. We'll see how it goes with these final few. So next up, I'm gonna put Dark Souls and Dark Souls Remastered. Again, the final bosses in these, I really don't think there's a difference. I mean, Dark Souls Remastered does come with the DLC, so maybe they're including Manus in that, but I'm not really sure. I'm just gonna say that both of these are talking about Gwyn. Gwyn is such an amazing fight. Like, you go on this long, treacherous journey, and then you get to kill into the first flame. You walk through this ash-ridden land, you know. Well, for me, I was sprinting through because I was trying to run away from all the Black Knights. But then normally, you know, when you get into a fog wall, you expect these big instruments, this big soundtrack, all these violins and strings going crazy and the choir going crazy, but instead, you get into Gwyn's arena and it's more tame, just the do. I don't even know how to like say the melody properly, but you know what I mean, like it's more somber than anything. And if you don't know what you're doing and you try to just like block and dodge your way through the fight, it can actually be quite challenging, but if you know what you're doing and you know the strategy is just like parrying him into oblivion, then the fight really isn't that bad. I know for me personally, every time that I do a playthrough of Dark Souls 1, I get into that boss fight and I'm basically taking him out in no more than maybe 5 or 6 hits tops because I like to use strength weapons. I also like to wear Havel's armor just so that I have extra protection just in case, but I go in there and as soon as he flies towards me, parry that one, get him down with the parry and just parry him over and over, and next thing you know, like 5 or 6 hits later, he'll be down. Even if you're not using a strength weapon, probably even with like a dex weapon, you can get him down like 6 or 7 parries tops. He's definitely not a lackluster final boss though. Again, the soundtrack is iconic, and if you don't know what you're doing with parrying, or if you're just bad at parrying in general, like, yeah, it could definitely be a little challenging, but once you get this parrying timings down, it's a lot more manageable. But yeah, I definitely think that Dark Souls deserves number 3. Next up at number 2, we have Bloodborne. Now, in my original series, Murgo's Wet Nurse was my final boss, but then I went back and I did another playthrough, just like a New Game 01, didn't do New Game Plus of Bloodborne to see if my opinion could change on the game a little bit, maybe see if I could start to enjoy it a bit more. And I'm happy to say that after playing through it again, I do enjoy the game a lot more than I did in my first playthrough. If you guys watched my original playthrough, I was, you know, by the time the game ended, I was like, I'm ready for this game to wrap up. It's an okay game, but it's really not for me. And while still, you know, the game, it doesn't rank among my favorites in the From Software catalog, it's still a really good game, and I do like it a lot more than I did before. And I did end up fighting Gehrman in that playthrough because, you know, when I did my original playthrough, I didn't know that refusing or submitting your life would result in, like, possibly fighting or not fighting the final boss of the game or whatever. Like, I didn't know that that was a thing. I know there's, like, another boss where if you eat all the umbilical cords, you know, the moon presence comes in or something like that. I haven't fought that boss yet. I don't know if people consider that to be the real final boss or if Gehrman's the final boss. I'm just considering Gehrman to be the final boss here. But for what it is, that fight was amazing. Like, up to that point, my favorite boss in the game was Gascoigne, but Gehrman. But now I can definitely say that Gehrman is actually my favorite boss in Bloodborne. It is so intense. It's very similar to the Gascoigne fight in the way that you have to be on your toes. You have to be like dodging, hitting, like knowing when to get those hits in, like being aggressively strategic. It's really hard to explain, but there's this flow to the fight. It's like this dance of death. I remember when I finally got him down, I was literally out of blood vials. Not to mention the arena itself is just, it almost gives me like Soul Cinder vibes, you know? It's like this vast open arena and it's just you two like fighting to the death and the scores going in the background, and it's just, it honestly is one of my favorite From Software fights, period, now. Oh, and don't even get me started on the fact that this guy literally has 3 phases. Next up, if you've been watching the channel for a while, it's pretty obvious what goes number 1 for me. This final boss is still my favorite boss fight in all of From Software's games, period. Soul of Cinder. By the time I beat this boss and by the time that the credits were rolling, I literally cried. I was truthfully sad that my Dark Souls journey was coming to an end. I had spent like that 2 or 3 months, however long it took, just, you know, making video after video of the Dark Souls games, going through Dark Souls 1 and then Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3. I cried at the end of Dark Souls 1 just because, you know, that I played that game at a point in my life where I needed to hear the message that the game was trying to tell me. By the time I beat Dark Souls 2, I was like, yay, thank God that's over. But by the time I got to the end of Dark Souls 3 and I realized I was at the end of the last Dark Souls game, and after reflecting on my journey up to that point and all the new people that I got to meet on this channel, just, you know, thanks to my Dark Souls series, it all kind of hit me in that moment. Like, while I was on my final attempt at Soul of Cinder, I knew that that was the final attempt. Like, I had been at it for 12 hours straight at that point. I learned everything that I needed to know. I literally switched my builds just for Soul of Cinder. I fought him with Fugs, and in that final attempt, as soon as I landed the final blow, I remember in that, I think that part even made it into the video, where I was literally just sitting there like, oh, wow. Like, I was literally just at a loss for words. I know I haven't even talked about the boss yet. I've just been talking about, like, how the boss impacted me and all that. But I feel like what I'm saying is relevant because that's kind of what Soul of Cinder is, you know? It's like that moment of reflection for you to reflect on all the previous games, whether you started with Dark Souls 3, whether you started with Dark Souls 2, whether you're like me and you started with Dark Souls 1. That whole final fight is just one big, long reflection. Like, every part of that fight just screams, like, reflection and acceptance to me. Not only is it a moment for you to reflect on everything, but in another sense, the reflection also turns into you using the abilities that you've learned throughout the last 3 games. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. Like, throughout the fight, he's switching builds the entire time. In the blink of an eye, he can be a mage, or he can be using like a longsword, or a curved sword, or pyromancy. So in that moment, you have to decide, like, how am I going to defend myself? How am I going to dodge this? How am I going to block this? When are my openings? Should I heal now? Should I wait to heal? And obviously, if you played the last 3 games up to that point, then you know your openings, you know when you're free to do all of that stuff. So it's basically just taking everything that you've learned and applying it to this boss. Obviously, there's a little bit of a difference with his moveset. Like, he has a few delayed attacks. Some of them come really quickly. Some of them are like flurry combos. Like, for example, when he has the curved sword out, I never even attack him. I literally just run the entire time that he has his curved sword out because I know I basically have no openings, and if he gets his hands on me, I'm probably dead. But furthermore, it's kind of like that moment of reflection in another sense, where you just get to reflect on the last 3 games you've played. You get to reflect on the adventure you just had. And then obviously, once you knock out his first health bar, and then he brings out Gwyn's sword and the OST gets going, you know, you start having those callbacks to the first game, and it's just like, it's this whole flurry of emotions. I also always love that moment when he get his first health bar down, because, you know, the Soul Ascender is like this ultimate being. He has the strength to wield like any build at will, but as soon as you knock out his first health bar, you know, he goes down, the soundtrack gets started, he pulls out the sword, and it's just, it's always been so badass to me. It's like in that moment, he's just like, he's hitting you with everything that he's got. He's like, he's trying to get you down. I always love that moment in like movies, games, shows, whatever, where like the big bad gets to that point where he knows he's losing, and he just like whips out his like, his last ditch effort. He's gonna hit you with everything he's got. But then going back to what I was saying earlier, it's also like a moment of acceptance. In that moment, you're accepting that the adventures come to an end. You're accepting that the series for now is coming to an end. You're accepting not only the real life implications as to, you know, your feelings towards the game and accepting that the journey's over, but it's also just like, you know, a form of acceptance in the game itself. It's kind of this moment where you just have to accept, like, yeah, the world's dead. The world's screwed. We're battling over this fading flame. You just have to accept that it is what it is. And in that moment, not to sound like cringy, cliche, but at the end of the day, all you got is you, your soul, and that's keeping you alive, pushing you towards your goal. Do you know what your goal is? I mean, in terms of Dark Souls, not really. But it's also kind of beautiful in a way, because even though the world, like, dying in a sense, and, you know, the flames are fading, protagonist still has a soul. And even though all else seems lost, he's still fighting. And the best part is, the protagonist is you. No matter how dark or how hopeless things seem, there's always something worth fighting for. Well, that got a lot deeper than I thought it would. Anyway, this is my ranking of all the final bosses in all of the Souls games. Now I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your rankings? Whatever you're thinking, I'd love to hear from you guys. Anyway, as always, a shout out to the patrons and channel members: Karma's Fave, Grandma, Liberty Tab, Big Daddy, Matty, Chalupasaurus, Rex, Razak, Polar, Ray, DeWebster, Lamas, Bianca's, Purgatory, Jumping Sant, Miller, Last King, Peter Magic, Mason, Irving, Teacher Wife, 15, Flim, 71, Aaron Reynolds, and Unknown. Thank you guys for watching. Have an amazing day. Stay beautiful. I love you all. And remember, don't go hollow. Peace.